Hey guys, welcome back to the Minijet YouTube channel. Today's episode 7 of our Cub build series, and in this video, we're gonna tackle some of the critical subsystems that we need to get the engine and the boat running and on the water. Namely, that's our fuel system, our cooling system, and our exhaust system. But the first thing that we're gonna do is get our fuel tank cradle all made up on the bench and get it ready to drop into the boat. So let's get to it. All right, so we're back in the shop with Ben, and we're just getting ready to drop the fuel tank into the Cub. So as you guys can see, this is our Spark fuel tank straight out of the ski. And this guy is our custom designed fuel tank cradle. So this allows you to basically run the OEM plastic tank inside of your boat, and it matches all the curves so it sits nicely. We'll generally add a little bit of foam material on the inside just to isolate it and make it similar to the OEM conditions that it's in. But yeah, Ben's just got it mocked up there.
Yeah, fits nice. And then while we've got this sitting in here, we've marked the positions on the cradle where the straps went stock in the ski. And then we're gonna line those strap holders up with those marks, and then we'll reuse the factory straps to hold that down.
Sweet. So we sell this guy. It's not on the website, but if you want one, give us a shout and we'll be sure to hook you up. And these guys, if you want to make your own cradle, these are our little minijet strap-tabs. You can either rivet or weld them or bolt them onto your custom construction. And there's just a little notch right there to reuse the OEM rubber straps. So pretty nifty setup we've got. And then of course, this cradle is just going to be bolted into the stringer of the boat, and then we're going to plumb this guy up to our fuel cap on the side of the boat. So
yeah, so it'll be welded there. Perfect fit for the stock straps.
So Ben's, I guess, just going to get to jigging those up like he had, and then welding them onto the side. Yeah. And then we'll jump in when we start installing this guy into the boat, and we'll go from there. All right, Ben, so you've got those little strap tabs welded onto the sides, and we've got some foam on the inside.
Yeah, and then we also bent the ends of these just quick. You can even do it with pliers so that those clip in really nice and kind of come around the side of the tank. Again, those are the stock straps from the Sea-Doo Spark. We reuse those. Now we've got kind of an interesting hole pattern here. There's going to be 4 1/4-inch bolts that hold that on, and the way that we determined that was with the fuel tank in the cradle. We pushed it as far back as possible. That's where you want the weight if you can get it. As far back as possible until it started to get close here. And then we gave it about a 1/2 inch of clearance for vibration, anything like that. And then I made a mark on the stringer. So that's where that bumps up to. And then we just looked through the holes that are in this plate and found spots where we were gonna hit the webbing of the box stringer, and then made 4 holes there. And so we countersunk some, I'm gonna need a driver, but and then we countersunk some 1/4-inch screws in there so that the heads are flush and they're not gonna rub on the bottom of the tank.
Cool. And those holes are tapped into the stringer?
No, they're actually just, they're clearance holes, so we're gonna use a nylock underneath. So it's a bit fiddly, but you gotta feed your hands in here and hold the nut on, and then get a wrench in there to tighten that up.
Perfect. So makes sense. It's a little more difficult to install, but this way I have the peace of mind that they're not gonna rattle loose or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, sweet. So basically, just got to bolt the cradle down. That's probably not going to go anywhere. If we need to service, we can just pull the tank out of the cradle. But then after that, it's just about plumbing the neck up. We've already got a pre-cut hole for our fuel fill cap.
Yeah, as long as you mount the fuel tank, back up against here with a bit of clearance, then it's pretty easy to make the neck. The neck will line up with this. We've checked it when we designed it. So.
Okay, so Ben's got the fuel tank situated in the boat. It's sitting in that cradle that we showed mounted up before. So that's fantastic. That's in its final position. Now you'll notice that the neck for the tank is not exactly where we want it to be.
No. Yeah, so this is the stock neck, just a straight one. We're actually not going to use that, and we're not going to use the stock cap either. It's a little bit bulky. It sticks up very high. It's plastic. So we're going to replace that with our mini-jet part here. So this is a billet aluminum piece. This one is vented, so the cap is vented, which is the same as the Sea-Doo cap, which has a vent underneath it. So you can see there's vent holes in that. So it works the same as stock. And in the Cub, there's a pre-cut hole here. It fits nicely in with these 3 holes that match up perfectly. So they're slightly undersized. They're just marked, so you just got to drill them out to final size. It's very easy. So that fits perfectly in there. And then there's a couple different models, and there's an optional threaded fitting here. So on this one, for a Sea-Doo, we're gonna just plug it off with a blank plug. You can also put in a barb fitting if you need to vent the tank, like in the case of a Yamaha is a different setup. So
if you buy one of these from our website, it's pretty simple. It comes in a little package just like this. So you'll see that this guy is for a Sea-Doo. It's marked on the back here. Vented cap, which Ben mentioned, and plugged body, which Ben also mentioned. So you can see the plug there, little brass piece, and then there's the actual cap assembly itself. And then there's also a nice set of instructions, or like a template, so that you can drill the hole that's pre-marked in this one. So it makes the installation process super, super simple. Yeah, once that's dropped in, it's as simple as throwing the fasteners.
So we've got our fasteners here, install those. And then the plug actually has to be installed after you install the cap.
Cool, and so a couple of cool features while Ben's throwing that together. This guy has an adhesive decal on the top, so if you're using it for like water or diesel and you don't want it to say gas, you can just get a different decal. You can also clock the decal. It's a separate piece, so you tighten everything together, get it all set how you want, and then you throw the decal on after, so it's in the perfect orientation every time. We've of course included a nice stainless steel chain there so you don't lose your cap if you're boating. And our gas cap has this great integrated rim and a little overflow channel. So if you're filling up at the gas station or with a jerry can and you spill, instead of the fuel kind of running into your boat, this little lip helps it all drain out. And then the nice thing about this cap is it's wide enough that it actually covers that entire thing. So when you're boating around or having people walking on the deck, they're not going to catch their feet or toes on this little lip. That's all completely hidden right there. So pretty nifty design. There's nothing really like it on the market, so that's why we decided to design our own. But yeah, so Ben's just finishing with the 3 bolts there for the installation, and then you'll be left with a 2-inch barb on the bottom.
Yeah, it's a 2-inch fitting. So we'll get a couple of rubber elbows and create our filler neck. It just basically has to zigzag from here over to the fuel tank. And then also we're going to reuse the stock spark fuel line. There's plenty of length in that. So that'll clip onto the fuel rail here, kind of loop around and clip right onto the tank. No modification needed there.
We generally like to use rubber fuel rated elbows and sections of bead rolled aluminum tube. We find that's kind of the easiest way to guarantee that a seal is made, using compliant hose clamps and everything like that. That's kind of what we like going for, and what we recommend. It's pretty easy to set up. So in terms of fuel system, that about wraps it up there. All right, so it's time to do the cooling layout in the Cub. So Ben's got everything mocked up here on the bench with a spare motor and a bunch of extra parts, so we can see the ins and outs of how everything works. So yeah, do you want to take us through it, Ben?
Yeah, for sure. So we'll kind of start with the freshwater side and the way that routes. So this is our jet pump sitting back here. There's a feed coming off of that. It's feeding fresh pressurized water from the propulsion system into the engine. So that runs up and around, and then it's potentially filled with sand and debris. So we run that through the sand trap. Anything will get caught behind this screen, and you can clean that as needed. And then the clean water runs from that into this side of the heat exchanger. So the heat exchanger has 2 cavities, and we flow the coolant and the water against each other inside there. So the fresh water comes in this end, flows across, and then from there it feeds into the exhaust manifold. And then this is the exit for the manifold, and this goes overboard out the side of the boat. And then on the coolant side of things, it's basically there's a thermostat in here. When the engine gets warm enough, it opens that thermostat and it starts circulating coolant. So it circulates out of the thermostat, through the heat exchanger, and then back into the water pump here, or the coolant pump. And then the reservoir is here to take up any expansion that's going on. And so that's just to show you guys on the bench, because it gets a little cramped in the boat, so you can understand the routing here.
Awesome. And so I guess the main difference from this to the Ski is that in the Ski, we don't actually have this heat exchanger, but we're using the ride plate instead, I guess as an alternative. The ride plate serves to cool the closed loop in the glycol, and it's still picking up that fresh water to run into the exhaust manifold, but we're kind of combining the 2 things into one here. And
yeah, the ride plate ends up being outside the boat, which is potential for damage in a rough, shallow water application. So This brings that whole system inside the boat where it's protected and safe.
I know some people, maybe not with the Sea-Doo Spark engine, but other bigger engines like to run open loop. Is there a reason that we don't recommend that in this application?
This maintains more of the way the stock system works. So you have a number of different advantages. There's corrosion protection, so you have coolant that will not rust running through the aluminum block, so no corrosion issues inside. Another thing is that because the coolant is always there, it can't run out. If you do happen to plug up your jet pump or plug up your sand trap, there's still always some coolant running through the engine, and that will protect it until your overheat sensors can step in and alert the operator that there's an issue. And also winterization, you only have to winterize the freshwater side of the system. The engine always maintains that antifreeze property around all the critical expensive components to protect them.
Awesome, so that makes a lot of sense. So in the boat, this heat exchanger is going to be mounted on a pad that's in a very similar location to the way it is on the bench.
Yeah.
And same thing with the sand trap, that'll be hung up like this.
And we're going to reuse these hoses for the coolant are all the stock Sea-Doo Spark hoses. They just happen to fit perfectly in this orientation, so you don't have to do too much customization there. There's just 3 hoses that you have to run for the freshwater side that are all straight, pretty straight runs, easy to do.
And so do you happen to know about how long hose and what inner diameter we're looking for that?
So all the freshwater stuff is 3/4 except for 1/2 inch on the exit of the exhaust manifold. It's smaller on the exit to basically apply a bit of back pressure to keep you from getting air bubbles in the system. This hose needs to be 1/2 inch, and it does need to be longer than the stock hose. As far as lengths, realistically, you probably need 6 feet of 3/4 inch line to plumb your freshwater side, and then probably 3 feet of 1/2 inch line.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So most of this stuff you can grab at minijet.ca on our shop.
Yeah.
The one exception being the hose and the hose clamps. That's not really included just because every boat application and layout is so different. We don't really want to box you into one situation there. So, But yeah, everything's pretty self-explanatory. You can get most of the stuff from us, and obviously we use our own parts whenever we're doing this. So yeah, we stand by that stuff. We like it. It works well. So yeah, next order of business, I guess, is dropping this whole thing into the boat. So I guess if you come over here, you can see the way that it's all actually laid out. So there you go. There's that pad that I was talking about that the heat exchanger will mount to. Another thing is the heat exchanger is really easy to service, I guess, when it comes to winterization or even just cleaning the debris out. It's as simple as just unbolting that bronze cap on the one side and shoving a pipe cleaner through if you get any debris stuck in it. And with this position here at the front, there's plenty of space around it, so it's really easy to pop that cap off, clean in there, or drain it out if you have to. So combined with the good hose lengths and everything that works is why the heat exchanger sits there. The sand trap has an integrated spot in this bar here. There's 2 bolt holes and 2 bolt holes there. We use U-bolts to secure the sand trap in just because it's pretty simple, easy, works, and that'll be there as well, nice and close to the heat exchanger, so we don't have another big run to put it somewhere else.
And then we also have, in that similar spot, integrated coolant bottle holder, and it also holds the air intake that will come into play.
So yeah, that coolant bottle right there will live right in that little spot there that Ben was mentioning. So just a matter of dumping it all into this shell. And I guess maybe one more thing worth pointing out, the actual pickup for the fresh water, I guess that'll have to go through the connection there that we installed when we did the...
Yeah, so right here, this is the water in. This is the Sea-Doo part that it's a barb that runs from the jet pump through the transom. So our feed line will go into that barb right there.
And so you would have seen us install that into the hull when we had installed it in the intake video. It just goes in the adapter plate there and it gets Sikaflexed in. So Ben transplanted everything that was on the bench for the cooling system into the Cub. So you can see that all there nice and mounted up on that plate that we had with the battery box, and all the plumbing is set up just like we had it laid out, starting at the back of the transom there, running all the way forward to the heat exchanger and sand trap. That's all good to go.
You can see we've got a hose on the bilge pump now, and there's I welded a couple little zip tie mounts there to hold that up.
And so this guy is going to run to our bilge pump outlet here on the side. Now this hole is pre-cut in the Minijet CUB, which is super nice, and it's in a really great spot.
Yeah, and then this guy is the outlet for the exhaust manifold. And then so this is here so you can look over your shoulder when you're driving and ensure that the water is flowing through there.
So the plumbing is done.
Yep.
And then moving forward, I see you've also got the cross braces installed. So these support the floor of the boat. As well, we've also got some pads welded in for the seat box. And now these guys are a 1/4 inch thick and they're tapped as well. So we don't have to worry about trying to get a fastener on the back side of the seat box. But you can see the 4 holes there on the seat box are going to line up with the 4 holes in the pads on the floor. So that's just going to bolt in super easy. Now being a Cub, this guy does have a bench seat, so that's why we've only got 2 seat brackets on here. But if you were doing an 8-11 or 10 build and had 2 single seats, you just have another seat bracket for each seat on the inside there. Pretty self-explanatory. This guy also has this nice return flange here, which the engine cover will bolt to. That's the back kind of bulkhead face here.
Yeah, bolt up here and down to the seat box.
And so that's going to be made of Kusa, which we'll get to in a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Anything else to touch on, Ben?
No, that's pretty much it. So that's all the welding should be done now.
As part of finishing the welding and starting on the electrical, you've mounted wire hangers underneath the gunnel.
Yeah. It's hard to show, but little zip tie mounts that look like
See if
like
I can
this.
get a shot.
There. So they'll just get welded every 16 inches or so along this gunnel and then across the back here, the top of the transom where we're going to run. We have to run over to the anchor light on that side.
Okay. So basically a nice L shape all across the boat there. And so yeah, with the auxiliary electrical, I guess that those hangers just make it easy to kind of mock stuff up as well as build out our harness for your first one. We're going to be using a wiring board to make our harness, so just helps with production. But if you are doing a one-off, running it through those with some loose zip ties, just kind of like looping the wire through and sending it around is probably the easiest way to do that instead of trying to mess around with a measuring tape or something.
Yeah, you'll get all your lengths right on.
Over here, we've also got the water box in for the exhaust. Now that is gonna have some silicone piping, and we sell a really cool kit that makes it super easy to install. So basically, that's just gonna come over so we have a high point in our exhaust to make sure that we're not getting any water backflow through.
Yeah.
And then it's gonna exit out the transom down there.
Yeah, we can show that when it's done, but it's basically 90 there, another 90 here, and then an exit out the bottom.
Awesome.
All silicone coupled together.
So it keeps it nice and flexible so everything can move, but it still, does everything that we want the exhaust system to. I guess the electronics mount is there. That's kind of another big piece that's been put on.
Yeah, so we're started mounting that. I've just got it loose so I can actually feed a couple wires underneath to the ECU here. But that's nicely mounted already. There's a fuse box mount here. And then the voltage regulator will go there. We'll show that when it's all complete as well.
Awesome. And these guys are rubber isolated too, so make sure that even if the engine is kind of shaking around, that none of your components get vibrated or anything like that. So it keeps everything fairly happy.
Yeah.
And then I guess the last thing, one of the kind of bigger physically parts is the engine tube structure. So these are all laser cut pieces and they correspond with holes that are pre-cut in the sides of the hull. So it's as simple as just kind of throwing a bolt through on those side ones and those are installed. And then this front back brace has a couple welds on it. And then this front bar is, I guess, slightly more complicated with some welds onto a tab that joins it all together. But I guess from here, then we've got the engine cover that goes on top, and then we'll have a closeout panel on the front as well.
Yeah, so those two pieces will be made out of Kusa board, and then the floorboard as well. So that'll be probably the next day that we're working on this, we'll see those panels come together.
All right, Ben, so more great progress since we last checked in.
Yeah.
I guess big things are this electronics bracket is mostly finished out with all the components mounted to it and a lot of the wiring run from that. And then also down there we've got our battery box and the battery itself. And then if we look at the back, we've also got the exhaust system all finished out. So yeah, I guess take a look around the back. We've got the Minijet exhaust outlet there, all bolted up nicely, Sika flexed in, so that's all good to go. Yeah, any other things going on, Ben?
Yeah, so that's pretty much the majority of the rigging in the back end here done. And then accessory wiring, we'll get everything done for that. Back here, it's just a blower and a bilge pump, pretty straightforward. And then we'll start running our electrical harness up to the front, and then it'll be mounting the gauge cluster, the switch panel, and the start button, and the desk key here, and then the steering helm. Those will be the next steps.
Like Ben mentioned, you'll see we've cut our dash hole out. We've got our dash mounting bracket there.
That will house the gauge cluster right there, nicely.
Awesome. And so yeah, that way everything's kind of just gonna sit in that little pod, and you can pull that pod in and out with the gauge cluster in it, all nice and neat. Like you've probably seen before, we have our pre-cut holes for steering, switch panel, start-stop button, and like Ben mentioned, the desk key there on the side. So those make installing all those components super simple and straightforward.
Yeah.
No holes really to be drilled at all. Okay, so now that we've got a bit more done on the boat, I think that's where we're gonna leave it for today, looking slightly more completed than when we started, so that's always a good thing. Now looking ahead, we've got the factory engine electrical system to modify and the auxiliary electrical system to build out for the boat. In addition to that, we've got a little bit more front side rigging as well, so the steering wheel and all those things like that, but we'll get to those in some future episodes. So be sure that you're subscribed to the Minijet YouTube channel so you don't miss any updates on this build series. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and let us know what you thought down in the comments below. With that, we'll catch you in the next one.